How many Pinterest boards should I create? Do I use group boards? And if I do use group boards for Pinterest, how do I find these group boards? What type of boards do I create for my Pinterest account? These are some of the most common questions I get asked when it comes to creating your Pinterest boards. In today's episode, I'm going to break it all down for you and answer all of these questions. By the end of today's YouTube episode, you are going to have a step-by-step plan for optimizing your Pinterest boards, whether you are just getting started from scratch or maybe you need to spring clean your Pinterest account. So very simply put, step one, what are Pinterest boards? They are really content buckets. So your boards or your content buckets are going to house your pins. And these pins on your boards, they send signals to the Pinterest algorithm about what your content is about, and everything from your board title to your board description to the pins on the boards, Pinterest can understand and index those keywords. And then it helps Pinterest understand who to show that content to based off of the user's searches. So that is why it's so important to optimize your board titles, descriptions, and those pins that are being placed on those boards, because it helps Pinterest understand your business and niche and then show that content to the right audience, the audience that is going to take action on your content. So for step two, I want you to survey your account. Now, obviously this will be a little less relevant if you don't have a Pinterest account yet, but a lot of people do have an account, even if it's just for their personal use. So I did have a personal account before I had a business account, and actually I took my personal account and converted it to a business account. Now, everything's 2020 in hindsight, right? It probably would have been a little bit easier to just create a brand new account for my business, but instead I decided to do the legwork of taking a personal account and converting it to that business account. And I say the legwork, it's actually very easy to convert a personal account to a business account, and it's free, super easy to do. But the reason why I became more involved work-wise is because all of those boards I had on my personal account really had nothing to do with my business now. So I really had to go in and do a large cleanup. So even if you already have a Pinterest business account, you've been marketing on Pinterest for your business, no matter where you are, I still want you to consider what boards you're creating. And even if you're just getting started from scratch, this is still important to understand. Those boards that are forward-facing or public to your audience, they should only be about your business and niche. So for me, I had taken that personal account and made it into a business. I had boards about DIY, my wedding, my baby nursery, my classroom when I was still teaching. Lots of things that really had nothing to do with Pinterest marketing. So if they were boards that I no longer was interested in, for example, I got married 11 years ago, I don't need a wedding board anymore, I actually just went ahead and archived it. But if it was a board I knew I was going to continue to pin to, I think I had one about feeding little kids and picky eaters, very much still a part of my life. I just made that board secret. Has nothing to do with my business and niche, but I wanted to keep it, so I just made it secret. So for this step two, I really want you to do that survey, and I want you to consider this even if you don't have an account yet, because those boards matter. So if you want to create a board that has nothing to do with your business, that's fine, but it should be made secret. So step three, this is super important. You want to do keyword research. And if you don't know where to get started with keyword research, you can check out this YouTube episode here, or I will link below my SEO expert workshop where I will do a deep dive on all of the different methods, how to house your keywords, give you one of my documents, and you can check out that workshop, which I will link below. But you need to understand keyword research because you are going to use these keywords and apply them when you are creating your board titles and writing your board descriptions. This is such an important piece of the puzzle. So whenever I'm starting an account from scratch for a client, I'm doing an account setup, I always start with keyword research because it's this firm foundation that you'll have to refer to, and it helps you understand what keywords your audience is actively using for search, because what you might title one of your boards might be different than how your audience phrases certain things. So that's why it's important to understand the words they're using when they are searching for your content. So do keyword research, have a working document, because this is not only going to help you when you are titling your boards and writing your board descriptions, but it's also going to help you with your pins, your pin titles, your pin descriptions. Like I said, it's just really a foundational piece of marketing on Pinterest and understanding those keywords. And things such as word order, the way that you're using the words, all of those come into play with SEO. That's why it's important to do that research. And what your audience is searching for on Google or YouTube or other platforms, it's not going to be exactly the same on Pinterest, because Pinterest is a visual search engine. So people approach each platform a little bit different, and they are in a little bit of a different mindset. So step 3, you have to start with that firm foundation of doing keyword research. Now, I'll show you this in a minute on my account, but when you're doing your keyword research, you can even filter by boards, which is a really cool thing to do, because then you can kind of get inspiration from other people and see, how many boards are coming up and if it's a very saturated keyword for specific boards. The other thing too, I want to mention, pro tip, when you are thinking about optimizing these boards and using these keywords, your boards can actually rank on Google, which is amazing, but also a really important reason why you need to make sure that they are optimized. I have actually done Google searches myself and had Pinterest boards come up as the most relevant topic for this Google search, and it blows my mind, but it's also really cool. So that's why, it's so important to do that keyword research. So step 4, when we are thinking about creating these boards, whether you have an existing account or maybe you're starting from scratch, especially if you're starting from scratch, aim for at least 10 to 15 boards. Now, I do want to say there is no perfect or specific number of boards, and that is a question I do get asked a lot, but it truly depends on your business, your niche, your content that you talk about, if you talk about a lot of different topics. And so it's important to know that there's not a perfect number. However, one indicator that kind of sets off an alarm or maybe a red flag for me is if somebody only has 3 or 4 boards, because for me, that's an indicator that their boards are probably too broad. So I do want to give an example here, because with step 4 and thinking about how many boards you have, I'm also going to tie in how to title these boards. So when you are thinking about the number of boards you have, you don't want to have too few, because like I said, that could be an indicator that they're too broad. And I want to give a very specific example. So one of my clients, she was a Teachers Pay Teacher seller, and she was in the education niche. And she really talked a lot about reading in the primary grades. And so she had a board that was reading K through 2. That was the title of it. And the longer I managed her account, I wanted to give her some feedback, and she had already been on Pinterest for a while before I became her Pinterest manager, and she had seen a lot of growth on Pinterest. However, I wanted to make sure that I was doing my due diligence, and if I saw something come up that could be improved, obviously I wanted to share that with her. So I said, hey, we have this board that's reading K through 2, but you talk about really specific topics within reading, and reading K through 2 is very broad. So for example, she talked about guided reading, phonemic awareness, the science of reading. There were all these very specific things that she talked about within reading K through 2. And when you can, and she would blog about those consistently. So there was a lot of content on these very specific topics. And if you can have a more specific board title, it's going to serve you better, and it's going to increase your chances of ranking for those keywords. Whereas reading K through 2 is so broad, because there's different reading concepts and standards taught for kindergarten, for first grade, for second grade. So if you can be more granular and be a little bit more specific, you're increasing your chance of being found by the right audience, and ones where you are giving them the perfect answer to their problem, if that makes sense. So that's why it's so much better to be more specific. So you can even think of this in terms of food blogging. If somebody just has recipes, think about how broad that is. Sometimes people are, searching by specifics, such as the best ever pancake recipes. So if you have more than one pancake recipe, or I would say even dietary concerns, if you have paleo, so paleo breakfast recipes, paleo lunch recipes, paleo dinner recipes, even just getting that more specific. Now, when we are thinking about board titles, this is something else that I get asked. What do I name my board titles? So I kind of segued this when I said that, you have your content buckets, which are your boards, and that they house the content pillars that you talk about or the main topics you talk about. But when you are thinking about these boards, you don't need to be cutesy. So I was looking at somebody's profile one time where they had heart and then it was the board title. So HEART, the word heart, before all of their board titles. So for example, if it was me, it would have said heart Pinterest marketing, heart affiliate marketing on Pinterest. The heart, I think they were just trying to add this fun little flair. It doesn't help in terms of SEO, and you wouldn't know that if you're not understanding Pinterest marketing and SEO and all of those things. Like I said, I think they were just trying to give it this cutesy name, but it's not necessary and it doesn't add to the searchability of your boards. So I would just remove that. So don't make your board titles cutesy or fluffy in any way. And another thing that used to be kind of a normal practice, people would use their brand name. So for example, I still have it. I need to go in and edit this actually. It says Emily Vales, Pinterest marketing and tips. Emily Vales does not help with indexing my boards, my content. Nobody's searching by Emily Vales. 97% of searches on Pinterest are unbranded. So that's not helping my board or my pins on that board get discovered by having Emily Vales on there. And so it's just not necessary. I think some people just liked to do that. I also think that people genuinely thought it was a best practice. Not necessary. You can just focus on those keywords. So I wanted to mention some of those things because that's something I still do see on people's boards. So you have to keep in mind, are these words that people would be using for search? Is this relevant? Is this necessary? And look at it through that lens. So step 5, it kind of goes back and ties in a little bit with step 2 when you were thinking about group boards. So I did want an entire step 2 be about group boards because this is something I still get asked about. Should I be in group boards? Do group boards still help? When in step 2 you're doing that survey, I want you to also think about the group boards and pay attention. So maybe if you already went through step 2 and you're like, oh, Emily, now I got to circle back. When you get to step 5, I'm talking about group boards. I want you to think about that though when you are surveying those boards, because if you are in a bazillion group boards, I would say leave them. I don't find that group boards are really beneficial. They were at one point. Pinterest creators kind of found a hack almost that if they utilized group boards, that it would really inflate and they would see more growth and reach on their pins. We're not seeing that anymore. And Pinterest created group boards for small collaborations. So for example, I had a baby shower board that I used for my sister and I, where we were planning a baby shower and we did collaborate together on that board. That is what group boards are for. But the way that people are using them, that's not how Pinterest intended them, with inflating our numbers, and they just don't work that way anymore. So I would say don't worry about searching for group boards. So if you're starting from scratch, don't worry about group boards. And if you're in the bazillion, like I said, group boards, I think that you can go ahead and leave them. Now I will say, if you want to double check that you're not going to hurt your account, you can go into your analytics and you can even see which of your boards are bringing you the most traffic. And if your group boards are, there's a couple that are really helping, then sure, stay in them. But I think that it's okay to leave those group boards and just focus on your boards, because guess what? Whoever created that group board, if they closed that board at any point in time, then you are losing all of that. So just keep in mind, it's just better to focus on your boards, your content in that way. So for step 6, I want to talk about the type of content you're putting on your boards, because once you've created those boards, you've given them titles, descriptions, I will say if you're starting from scratch, I do think it makes sense to put some pins on those boards, help Pinterest understand what that board is about. But I don't recommend pinning a lot of other people's content, because you're essentially marketing for other people, which that's nice, that's fine. However, it's not something that's going to benefit you long-term, and it's not necessary. You can totally focus on pinning your own pins. So I wanted to mention that when you're thinking about what to put on your boards, you can totally focus on your own content. And that also leads into when you're thinking about those boards, if you created a board because you think that your audience wants to see that type of content, but you don't have any of your own content to put on that board, that's not super helpful. So don't create boards just because you think your audience would be interested in that board. Only create boards if you can create content for that specific board, if that makes sense. And with step 7, I am going to jump over to my Pinterest account in a minute, but I wanted to mention step 7, I wanted to cover sections within your boards. I don't recommend them. If you have such a broad board that you need to create sections for it to kind of organize it, I would say that that board is too broad. So I don't use sections myself. I don't recommend them. Like I said, if you are needing them because your board is so broad that you have to create sections within it, I would say that's an indicator that you should kind of break that board out by those sections and create those sections that within that board, new boards, if that makes sense. So if you have board sections because it's such a broad topic, then that means that board is too broad. So let me know if you have questions about that in the comments, and I'm happy to cover that more. But what I want to do now, I want to jump over to my Pinterest account so I can just kind of give you a quick example of how to create a board, what mine look like, and that optimization process. Okay, so here we are inside my Pinterest account. And as I mentioned before, we are going to check out how to create a board, what this looks like. So if you are going to create a board, you're just going to come over here to this plus sign and you can click on board, and then it's going to bring up this screen. So you're going to enter in the title here. And then if you want to keep it secret, so maybe this board has nothing to do with your business or your niche, then you can keep it secret. And then you are going to click on create. Now, I'm not going to add any collaborators. I know I briefly touched on group boards. I would not recommend creating group boards to improve your pin distribution, as I mentioned before. So I don't add collaborators unless it literally is for me and another person who are going to be collaborating, and the purpose of why Pinterest created group boards. So once you create that board, let's pretend that we created it. So for example, here I have this elf ideas. So I was pinning things around Christmas time and I realized that I had forgot to make it secret. So I had to go in and make this board secret, but I just have elf ideas. So it's not optimized or anything like that. It doesn't have a description. This was just for personal use. I was thinking of elf on the shelf around Christmas time for my girls. So now let's look at one of my other boards. Ooh, I know. So I have this board. I mentioned this before. I'm going to click on the pencil and that will allow me to edit it. So it says Emily Vale's Pinterest marketing resources. And also actually this board description, I need to practice what I preach. This isn't the greatest description. So we talked about this when I mentioned doing keyword research and having this foundation. When you are naming your board titles and then writing your board descriptions, I recommend making this description really robust, meaning using a combination of pillar and long tail keywords, and really not keyword stuffing, but in natural language, filling it, whether that be 4 to 5 sentences, and telling people what they're going to receive on this board. Because as I mentioned before, it's not just for the Pinterest user. Of course, you want to use natural language so that if the Pinterest user comes to your board and they read it, that you aren't writing it and just stuffing a million keywords, but that, you know, you're using natural language for the user, but then also including a lot of keywords too for the algorithm, so that when Pinterest is understanding what your content is about, you've given it a lot of information. So I've seen people literally just put a million keywords in no normal sentences. I would not recommend doing that. I also, another question I get asked about is hashtags. I don't use hashtags or recommend them. If you wanted to test it, you could, but people don't really use hashtags on Pinterest. So that's not something I would recommend. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to remove Emily Vale's. That does not help with the searchability of this board. So I could even stand a spring clean myself. And it's crazy too how even if we've been marketing on Pinterest, how sometimes things kind of get away from us. For example, some of my board descriptions, I'm like, really? Why is this not a better board description? So it says, learn about how to use Pinterest marketing for your business. On this board, you'll find Pinterest marketing tips, tutorials for SEO, and so much more. Okay, so this isn't great. I need to think this through a little bit. And honestly, I need to look at my pins on this board too. And let's see. So I have one about ads. It's really just general Pinterest marketing. Pinterest for beginners, complete guide to pin design. So I could go back in and edit that again. So then once you click on the board, you'll see here too, if I click on these
three dots, I can click on edit board. From there, learn about how to use Pinterest marketing for your business. On this board, you'll find Pinterest marketing tips, tutorials for SEO. Okay, you don't need to watch me sit here. I can go back and optimize this board description a bit more. So you can see here, even some of mine. Let's look at another one. So side hustles for moms. So I teach about how to become a Pinterest manager. Some people might consider that a side hustle, although most of my students are doing that too. They're starting their Pinterest management business to replace their 9-to-5, but the person who is searching for side hustles, this might be relevant to them. So you can see side hustles for moms. Are you a mom looking for a side hustle or a career that will allow you to still support your family, but also be at home with your kids? On this board, you'll find the best side hustle ideas for moms that don't want to have to choose between financial freedom and being there for the kids. The best part about these side hustles are that they can be scaled if you're looking for more income and impact. So you can see that that's a much more robust description. All of the pins on this board have to do with starting your Pinterest management business. So I have side hustles, but then another angle. So this is also interesting when you're thinking about creating these board titles and what to name them. I want you to think about what people are searching for from a problem aware and a solution aware approach. So some of my audience might just be searching for side hustles or work from home options. That would be problem aware. They understand that they have a problem. They want a job that they can do from home for whatever reason. Now, people who are solution aware know that they want to become a Pinterest manager. And I know my audience would be searching for Pinterest management, Pinterest manager, or Pinterest virtual assistant as well. So I called my academy the Pinterest Manager Academy. I say Pinterest Manager rather than Pinterest virtual assistant, but some people might be searching by Pinterest virtual assistant. So I wanted to share that because when you're thinking about your boards, there could be different searches based off of your audience and what point they're at, whether they're problem aware or solution aware. So that's kind of an interesting little tip there. And I just had like a board about Pinterest management before. And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, really, some people don't know that they want to become a Pinterest manager and they know that they want to work from home. So that's why I started kind of taking this different approach with my boards. And that's really a strategy when you're thinking about how you want your content to be discovered. And remember, your content can rank on Google as well. So these boards can rank on Google. So that's why it's important to think about that. So that's kind of a good little pro tip there. Now you'll see here, I was trying to find an example of a group board. You can see I have lots of secret boards still. This one down here, this Pinterest and Instagram and blog tips group board. So I am a part of this group board. I don't really pin to it a lot. I could just leave it. The pins on it are definitely relevant to my business and niche. I have been invited to group boards after the fact and I've just declined them. So you might get invited to group boards. You're not being rude. You don't have to accept them by any means. So if you get invited to group boards and you don't want to be a part of them, that's totally fine. Just decline them. You might get invitations. I do. And sometimes I'm looking at it, I'm like, this isn't even relevant. And then sometimes it is, and I just don't want to join them. So you have that prerogative and that's okay. So I wanted to just kind of show you these boards. And I wanted to point out too that like on these boards, you'll find that there's no sections. Remember how I mentioned the sections? The sections are just a way to organize within the board. So with that section, it's almost kind of like having a subtopic. So you have your board and then within it, within the sections, like I said, it's kind of like having subtopics. But once again, that probably means your board is too broad. And so I just wanted to show that I don't have those. That's not something that I would recommend. So yeah, there's my boards. Oh, I know one thing I wanted to show you in terms of doing the searches. Okay, so let's go to my home feed. I wanted to show you this really quickly. So let's say I start searching by Pinterest management. Now, if you go over to this left side with filters, you can click on boards. And when you are thinking about, if you've done your keyword research and you're trying to decide like what to title some of your boards, and maybe you're wondering like, do people search this? Is this a good, would these be good titles for my boards? You can always do a quick search and just see what other people are doing. And if it seems like there's very much latitude, meaning like, are there a lot of group boards? Is there not very many group boards? And there's not that there has to be a specific amount, but if nothing's coming up at all, that also might be an indication that this isn't something that your audience really searches for either. So you can see here, Pinterest management, that's exciting. This means this is my board, that my board is ranking for Pinterest management, that entire board. So I could get ideas though. So Pinterest manager services. Ooh, I don't have a board about Pinterest management services, so this could inspire me as well. You can see starting a Pinterest manager business. This is my board as well. And there's another one about Pinterest management services. So you can kind of get content inspiration as well. I never recommend copying people, but if you see themes, and there's another one actually that says Pinterest manager services. So it can just give you some good ideas for other boards that you could be creating within your niche. Now, one that I wanted to show, side hustles. So I'm going to search side hustles. So this is one that is typically pretty saturated. So I'm going to look here. I don't see my side hustle board coming up here, but there's also a lot more saturation for side hustles. So that's why I got even more granular for mine, and I did side hustles for moms. So remember when I said that you don't want it too broad? It's kind of towing this line with your board titles, that you don't want to be too broad, but you don't also want to be too specific where you don't have content to pin to that board regularly. So that's something else to keep in mind. Oh, okay. So for side hustles for moms, my board is the first one that comes up. So I see side hustle ideas, side hustles for moms. So one other person I see. So that's kind of interesting. So I would say a lot less maybe comes up for side hustles for moms. Easy side hustles. Like I said, you can get ideas. Mom jobs. Ooh, mom jobs. That might be a pillar keyword that would be good for my audience. Online jobs for moms. Side hustles for moms, another one of those. So like I said, you can get inspiration, see what other people are doing. Also, if there's very much coming up, I have done searches before where just a few boards came up. And that tells you that maybe it's not super searched, and it could be then a good way to rank for that. But also too, if you can rank for something that is highly searched for, then you're reaching an even broader audience. So it's not about just playing this game, but also thinking about what are the exact words my audience is searching for. So like I said, side hustles, that's pretty broad, and a lot of different people could be searching for that. And I really mainly serve more women than men in my academy, and even within a specific age category. So I'm really trying to target that person and not just anybody, right? So I wanted to show you this little fun tip here with filtering by boards, but also, like I said, if you just need to do your keyword research from scratch, be sure to check out the episodes I mentioned that are on my YouTube channel, or if you want to check out my workshop. Also, side note, I would love for you to subscribe so that you can get more Pinterest marketing tips. But let's go ahead and wrap up this episode.
I hope you found this step-by-step how to create and optimize your Pinterest boards episode super helpful. And I would love to know in the comments, because what you want to know about, what you want to learn about is so important to me. Let me know in the comments what questions you have, whether it be about Pinterest boards or just Pinterest marketing in general. I would love to invite you to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to check out those resources that I mentioned that will be linked below. And I can't wait to see you soon in next week's episode. Bye for now, friends.